This Saturday, September 21st, our very own Eilon Levy will be debating Al Jazeera's Mehdi Hassan in New York City. We will be sharing all the relevant information on our platforms about how to watch the debate live, how to host a watch party, and how to join a watch party. Make sure you're following. More info is coming very soon. Today is day 345 of the October 7th war. Iran's terror pirates in Yemen, the Houthis, tried to murder me this morning. I woke up to sirens at 6:30 a.m. along with millions of Israelis. The Houthis in Yemen fired an Iranian ballistic missile at central Israel. It was intercepted by Israel's air defenses before it struck the Tel Aviv metropolitan area. Israel has no conflict with Yemen. We should be at peace, not at war. But the Houthi terror army turned Yemen into one front of Iran's seven-front war on the Jewish state. Iran is using militias in Yemen, Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, and of course Hamas and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad in the Gaza Strip and the West Bank to try to destroy the Jewish state, while also destabilizing those Arab societies with chaos and bloodshed. Iran is trying to ignite a ring of fire around Israel. Iran is happy to burn the Arab world along the way. Israel is extinguishing Iran's flames. Israel is breaking Hamas in the Gaza Strip. Israel in the past already struck the Houthis in Yemen. Someone even eliminated Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran, Iran's capital. There are reports that the first tier of Israel's air defense may have missed intercepting today's ballistic missile. The second tier got it. No defense is 100% effective. That's why everyone supporting Israel's right to self-defense understands that it's not enough for Israel to shoot down Iran's missiles in the sky over our country. Israel needs to be able to destroy their launchers too. The people of northern Israel also ran to shelters today, as Iran's terror army in Lebanon, Hezbollah, tried again to murder them. Hezbollah this morning launched 40 rockets, missiles, and drones at homes in Israel's north. Hezbollah launched over 100 since the weekend began. Hezbollah launched over 200 since last week. Hezbollah launched over 8,000 rockets, missiles, and drones since October 8th, when Hezbollah joined Hamas's brutal massacre of Israel's people. 60,000 people have fled their homes in northern Israel. Like with the Houthis and Hamas, Israel will not allow Hezbollah to continue its murder campaign. Israel's military said it stands ready to remove the threat. It's been 11 months of constant attempts to murder people in Israel's north. Hezbollah and its Iranian backers must back off, or Israel will push them away. Like with Yemen and Iran's April aerial assault, those standing with Israel know that Iranian missiles launched at Israel are an escalation, wherever they come from. Israel removing these threats from Yemen, Iran, and Lebanon is defense, and what every country would do. UNRWA head Philippe Lazzarini said he has no way to know whether Hamas infiltrated UNRWA. 2 days ago on the BBC, Lazzarini struggled to justify his constant accusations against Israel in the face of overwhelming evidence that Hamas compromised UNRWA. Lazzarini's admission is enough to discredit him and UNRWA. But like when Lazzarini claimed he didn't know Hamas built headquarters underneath UNRWA's headquarters and ran electricity wires between the facilities, he is obviously lying. The same day, news reported, in a recorded conversation, Hamas terrorists said that they had so much UNRWA-delivered aid that their warehouses were full. Hamas has too many diesel trucks and pallets of food to store. A few days earlier, news reported Hamas made $500 million from selling UNRWA-delivered aid. UNRWA is being sued by October 7th victims because they pay staff in US dollars that Hamas money changers earned $1 billion in commission on. And UNRWA has thousands of Hamas affiliates and hundreds of terrorists on staff, many of whom joined the October 7th massacre, some in video or audio recordings. UNRWA's boss 20 years ago said he did know Hamas were on staff, and he didn't see that as a crime. UNRWA is Hamas, Hamas is UNRWA. Tell your leaders, it's time to shut down Hamas's UN front Stop the financing of murder and forever war. It's time to fire Lazzarini and defund UNRWA, just like the Swiss government decided to do so last week. Now let's take some questions from our audience watching live on social media.
Thank you, Ashley, and to everyone watching live on social media. After a drone from Yemen struck Tel Aviv some time ago and killed an Israeli citizen, Israel struck back in Yemen quite forcefully. What do you expect Israel will do in response to a ballistic missile from Yemen striking Israel?
Well, as you know, the Houthis, as I mentioned earlier, Yemen should be at peace with Israel. We don't want war with Yemen. We don't want war with the Houthis. We don't want war with Iran. But when we are attacked, we do everything to defend our civilians, whether that means that we must take out their launchers or whatever we will do, whatever we can do, wherever it is in the world, Israel will always do what it needs to do to defend its civilians. And so I won't be surprised if I see, Israel defending its citizens. It's important to take into account that there will be people, I'm going to preempt already what people around the world are going to say. People are going to say Israel is escalating the war. Israel is could be escalating us into a regional war. It's important to understand that we are already in a regional war. And when Israel defends its citizens, it is simply that. It is a defensive war. The ones who are escalating are Iran, Hezbollah, Houthis, Hamas. If nobody attacks Israel, Israel will seek peace with everyone in the region.
This is a question from our Instagram stories. There's a headline in the Times of Israel that says the Prime Minister of Israel is said to warn that Israel faces, quote, a large-scale confrontation with Hezbollah in the near future. What do you assess will be the spark or the factors that lead to such a large-scale confrontation, and what can be done to potentially avoid it?
Well, I think that the Prime Minister's visit to the United Nations is an important one because the United Nations and our global allies need to understand that, like I just mentioned, Israel will do whatever it takes, whatever it needs to do to defend its sovereign borders. And everything that Hezbollah has been doing since October 8th is a clear violation of international law. They are attacking civilian populations, civilian areas. The north of Israel has been evacuated for about 11 months now. And there is a clear violation of the United Nations Resolution 1701, calling for Hezbollah to disarm. And so I think that this visit is important. Our Prime Minister must call out the hypocrisy of the United Nations and hopefully have the support of our global allies to, like I said, do whatever Israel needs to do to defend its civilians. We will no longer be willing to live with a terror proxy army backed by Iran on our borders, threatening our civilians' lives.
The United Arab Emirates has reportedly vowed that it will not take part in Gaza's day after without Israel agreeing to a clear pathway to a Palestinian state. How would you assess Israel's current relations with the UAE, and how can their relationship be used to improve the situation in Gaza and the wider region?
So the Abraham Accords are still holding strong, and we're happy. And our ties with the United Arab Emirates are still good. And I think what people in the West need to understand is sometimes things need to be said for diplomatic reasons, but we don't really know what's happening behind closed doors. I think it's important and encouraged that the United Arab Emirates, as they have taken care of indoctrination in their borders, they have become an ally of the West, an ally of Israel. They have been de-escalating violence in the region. I think it is important that they will be part of a future solution. We want a solution here in Israel. Israel does not want to control the lives of Palestinians. Israel wants to see Palestinian people, with self-determination and self-governance. But we've seen that. We had self-governance in the Gaza Strip for nearly 17 years. And we saw what that brought the citizens of Israel on October 7th. And that's if you completely disregard the past 18 years of rockets coming out of the Palestinian statelet. And so I encourage the UAE to take part in the future building of Gaza, into replacing UNRWA's mechanism of continuing the indoctrination to hate Israel, to hate Jewish people, and to encourage the people of Gaza to want to live peacefully side by side with the people of Israel, just like we want to live peacefully alongside them.
There's a report that the Israeli military has ordered Palestinian residents of Beit Lahia in northern Gaza to evacuate once again in advance of IDF operations. How do you see the current status of the war in Gaza? What are the war goals? And is there an end date forecast for major operations like this in Gaza?
Northern part of Israel, the northern part of Gaza, I should say, Israel's military operations were successful. And so many civilians were allowed to come back and go back into their homes in the northern part of the Gaza Strip. Unfortunately, as I mentioned earlier today, we have seen so many dollars, being flooded to Hamas through stolen aid and money changers, that Hamas, with its $500 million, has been able to recruit new soldiers, new fighters, new terrorists, and send them back to the north. And so Israel, the Israeli military will need to go back to every single place where the terrorists are building strongholds again. You have to understand also the geography of the region. The northern part of the Gaza Strip poses an immediate threat on our borders and the civilians who live closest to that northern part of the Gaza Strip. So, people criticize how Israel is going back and forth, but the reason Israel, or the Israeli military, I should say, needs to go back and forth is because we don't want to endanger the lives of civilians. Once an area has been cleared and there is no longer military operations, we allow the civilian population to go back to their homes and to, reestablish their lives. Unfortunately, when Hamas, who is using their own civilians as human shields and hostages effectively in this war, they have no care for the civilians of Gaza. So they infiltrate their terrorists back into that civilian population. And in order to not see increased civilian casualties, once again, the Israeli military must go in, re-evacuate the people until it is safe for them again to go home.
There's news today that the Prime Minister of Jordan has submitted his resignation less than a week after parliamentary elections there saw some gains for Islamist opposition. How do you assess the current state of Israel-Jordan relations, and where do you see them going in the future, especially in the aftermath of the recent shooting attack on the Israel-Jordan border?
I think the Jordanian government understands that the Islamic radicalism coming in backed by Iran, we've already reported here at the Israeli Citizen Spokesperson's office about the weapons coming into Jordan from Iran. I think the Jordanian government understands the threat on Jordan as well, and their peace and security and their stability. That is, as we mentioned, Iran doesn't care which Arab countries it destroys and throws into chaos along the way. And so, like I also mentioned previously, there are some things that are said out loud for either diplomatic reasons or to try to calm the Arab street. But I think at the end of the day, the peace between the Jordanian government and the Israeli government not only will hold, but will continue to be stronger and stronger as the Iranians continue to pose a threat on the entire region.
How should, this is our last question for today, how should friends of Israel, Jews around the world, relate to the divisive political atmosphere in Israel that they see in the headlines? What's the big picture that you would want people not in Israel to take away from the situation in Israel, and how to talk about it?
I'm going to share my personal view on this. I personally am not one of the people who goes and demonstrates every week, but I will die supporting every Israeli's right to demonstrate, because that is what makes us who we are. The only democracy in the Middle East where people can demonstrate and protest against their government during war. There's a famous saying that if you bring 3 Jews into a room, you get 30 different opinions. We are a thriving democracy, and the protests, the demonstrations on the streets just prove that even more. So anyone trying to discredit Israel or delegitimize the state of Israel because of the protests simply doesn't understand the situation. It is because of those protests, our thriving democracy, that every single one of us, whether we are protesting or not, are proud to be Israelis. That's all the time we have for today. Thank you very much for tuning in. And as always, we will see you tomorrow at 3 p.m. Israel time, 8 a.m. Standard Eastern Time. Have a good day.